Okay, Norwich City are back in the Premier League. 3 promoted clubs, but Norwich City were the team that took the title last season, stormed the Championship after quite a tricky little start. They actually just went on an incredible run, scored so many goals, and are now back in the Premier League. Jack Reeve from Talk Norwich City joins me right now to talk about this club, the rise, and the next season in the Premier League. Who are the kind of players that are going to help keep them in the Premier League this season? So, Jack, first of all, how are you, mate? You good?
Very good. I love that intro. We're back. We are back in the Premier League. We are, these collaborations don't happen in the Championship. No one cares about us now in the Championship.
Well, that's it. It's a new spotlight, isn't it, for you? And I did look, just as you were saying there, I think the last video we did was probably that it was you reporting from outside. It might have been Norwich's Stadium or Brighton Stadium, being a bit upset because you'd gone down. But it's typical Norwich, you're bouncing back up, right?
And I can also remember me and you, I think we were doing a Premier League predictor. And I think I'd put Norwich something like 8th that season.
Of course, yeah.
We went down 19th. So don't listen to too much, I say, and trust my opinion that much. Because the last time I was on the Ball Street channel, it didn't go so well.
Very, very true. Well, but it's all worked out now. You're back in the Premier League. So let's talk about last season first, because I think that's going to be the basis for certain elements of any person's prediction on Norwich City this season. Because, like you say, that first year after getting relegated was a huge disappointment. Daniel Farke came in, and it wasn't the sort of renaissance that you were probably hoping for. There'd been a lot of changes, and a lot of players had to leave. Madison, probably the most high profile. So what happened last season? How did you get your act together and end up winning the title?
It was unbelievable. And you say there, I'd almost forgotten we'd lost the likes of James Maddison, Angus Gunn, the Murphys. Our best player at the core of our squad had gone, and we were signing the likes of Maurice Leitner, who you kind of heard of if you play a bit of FIFA, Tom Tribal, Timu Pukki, these kind of players who you'd heard of, but you didn't know too much about. And the start of last season, having come off the back of a season where we finished 14th, the football we were promised simply wasn't delivered, and there was a lot of restlessness going on. And we didn't start the season well. We hadn't won a game in 6. We went away to Ipswich at Portman Road, of course, our derby match. There were chants of Daniel Farke sort it out. We want Farke out. We scraped the draw there and then went on a monumental run from there until the end of the season. I think we went something like in the next 30 games, we lost just twice, playing some extraordinary football. And it just felt like all of the little building blocks that had been put in place by Daniel and Stuart Webber, our sporting director, and just built a big enough foundation for them players to work from. And from there, confidence snowballed. We got a bit of luck along the way. But we went up as champions, and quite rightly so. We were the standout team in that division. We played the best football. We scored the most amount of goals. There's a lot of talk about Aston Villa. There's a lot of talk about Sheffield United. We finished a hell of a lot of points ahead of Aston Villa, and they spent a hell of a lot more money. So it was a remarkable season, one I'll look back on fondly for the rest of my life. And I'm really excited about what we can possibly go on to now with the people we've got in place.
Yeah, there's 2 levels of foundations here. Hopefully, if you're an optimistic Norwich City fan, which I know you are, Jack, I think the sort of second stage of it was on the pitch and what you saw last season, and the fact that most of those players are there with you in the Premier League next season, and they all know each other very well. But the other set of foundations were probably made in the season before, where there was that unrest. And I know you had Stuart Webber on your channel, Talk Norwich City. Incredible for you to get someone of that level in the club to sit down and chat with you for an hour. I would recommend everyone should go and watch that podcast. It was fascinating and the reason it's fascinating is because of the impact that he's had at Norwich City. Just talk me through his role and his impact in creating those initial foundations for what's happened at Norwich.
Yeah, James, it's remarkable, Stuart Webber, what he's done. And if people don't know who he is, and I don't expect people to know who he is, then definitely go and check his story out. So he came from Huddersfield, in which he'd taken them to the Premier League the season before. With Wagner, he brought him in and a lot of them players in. And Stuart's role at Norwich City is essentially to oversee everything on the pitch. So he's sending the scouts out. He's assembled his own scouting team. And he annoyed a lot of people when he came into the club. He sacked pretty much every single person at management level and brought his own in. He sacked the majority of coaches, high-profile coaches. The likes of Darren Huckabee were on that list. sacking legends is never going to be something that goes down well. He did it. He annoyed a lot of fans. The season he came in which he wasn't really working, but watching things from the stands, we beat Reading 7-1. And he said it was the worst atmosphere he'd ever heard at any club. He annoyed a lot of fans saying that.
Wow.
But it's his honesty that is so refreshing with us. And he's a fascinating character. He takes personal development incredibly seriously. He's very well read. He uses marginal gains across the board. He's revolutionised the way that training happens at Colney. He's got £5 million out of the fans with a bond and rebuilt our training ground. It actually looks like a proper training ground now. But his relationship with the players, his relationship with Daniel Farker is something so special. And I think that was what was our success has been built on, is that relationship between players. He said that many a time he's had high-profile players go into his office and just have really personal chats. A lot of these players have come over, maybe don't speak English as their first language, well, a lot of them don't, and just having really open chats. And I think if you can have that honesty at the highest level, it's only going to work. Our group is incredibly tight-knit, but yeah, Stuart's a fascinating character, and I think in the future we'll probably go on to much bigger and better things than Norwich City.
Well, I think that's the turning point as well, is the fact that, you know, in football and certainly in the Championship, you need to get it right. It's such a tough league, and there are enough managers ready to take the place of the manager that's struggling. And so for those two to stick together a little bit when there was a bit of a storm and it wasn't really working out, it's a huge thing that actually led to, you got the rewards from it, didn't you, in the next season. What are the challenges then for Stuart Webber, and what do you think is the general kind of process that he will look to employ to allow Norwich City to become a club that stays in the Premier League for a good few seasons?
I think the reason, as I said there, that our success was built on honesty, trust, and our recruitment has just been second to none. I mean, you look at the team we had last season, it was assembled on about £10 million. You've got a player in there in Timu Pukki on a free who goes and scores 30 goals in the league. You've got Max Aarons, who's now being touted with moves to Man United, to Jamal Lewis. These were nobodies a couple of seasons ago. These were players who were brought through the academy. Timu Pukki, for example, had a failed season abroad. Tom Tribal had been left out of many Borussia Dortmund sides. So these are players that had been brought in, given a chance, an arm around the shoulder, and just said, look, go out there and see what we can do. We believe in you. The fans believe in you. Now go and prove something. It's slightly more ruthless in the Premier League. You're up against teams who are, I mean, opening day of the season, Liverpool, we're now having to defend against Mo Salah instead of Che Adams. It's a slightly different ballpark. So it's going to be slightly more ruthless. We're going to have to spend a little bit more money. So it's that, can we sign players in that next bracket who are, one, willing to come in and buy into the culture, one, not going to annoy any of the current players because they're going to be on higher wages, things like that.
Yeah.
I think, you know, we might speak later about lessons from previous promotions, but the big one that always comes back up, we spoke to Russell Martin, Wes Houlihan, he always said, when you go from the Championship into the Premier League, that team cohesion is so tough to keep because you've then got these big-time Charlies coming in who maybe don't go out to disrupt things, but just naturally disrupt things. They're on bigger money. They've had better careers. That's when things change. It's going to be fascinating to see if that culture that's worked so well over the past 2 seasons continues through.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, trust me, I know exactly what you mean when you're talking about those big-time Charlies being a QPR fan. I think you're right. I think that having that stomach for the fight cannot be underestimated, and that's why, you know, a team like Cardiff City last season actually got quite close to staying up, because in terms of personnel, it wasn't right. I think where Norwich could be a bit of a sort of shock side this season is about working smarter. I think that's been the big thing and that's why there's a lot of names here, which we're going to go through right now. There's a lot of names that people go, who are these guys? Because they've not come down from these big clubs and you know them from that. They've found the differentials, they've found the marginal gains in these players and then put them together. And it leads to actually a lot of trust between the fans and the management when they get it right, because you'll then go, oh, okay, I have no idea who this dude is, but I trust Stuart Webber to get it right. And that could pay dividends in the Premier League. Let's have a look at some of those players then. So who are the 3 players? I've got a few written down here. It'd be interesting to see if you say the same names. Who are the sort of players that are going to be crucial in keeping Norwich City in the league this season?
Yeah, I think we've got a few players who really stand out. I think let's start from the defence. Max Aarons for me, he's a right back. Previous to that was Ivo Pinto, our captain, and a love captain at that. Daniel was like, no, I'm dropping you for an 18-year-old at Ipswich. He made his debut at Portman Road. He's come in. He's so mature. He's so athletic. I think he's the modern day fullback in a way. He gets up and down the pitch. He's very athletic. He was a champion national 100-metre runner when he was younger and nearly took up athletics instead of football. So Max Aarons is a real one to look out for.
And your fullbacks in general, is that a big part of how you play as a team?
It is, yeah. And on the opposite side, on the left-hand side, we've got Jamal Lewis, who isn't quite as athletic, is a bit taller, moves in a slightly different way, but equally gets up and down the pitch so well. And mature. These are young lads, and they were being put up against it in the Championship, week in, week out. It's demanding. I think that's almost going to help us going to the Premier League. A little bit more rest time between games. That will enable the likes of Max to really kind of recover well and go good. Emi Buendia is absolutely magnificent. I'm incredibly surprised we've just signed him up on a new 5-year deal. I know that means we're not definitely going to keep him, but the intent is there, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Stuart Webber said that as soon as he saw Emi Buendia play, Daniel came to him and said, look, I'm really unhappy that James is leaving, James Maddison. And Stuart said, don't worry, I found someone just as good, which is unbelievable considering you've just lost one of England's best young players. Emi Buendia is fantastic as a number 10 who's just wonderful. And then Timu Pukki, I think it's going to be interesting watching him in the Premier League because he set the Championship alight, 30 goals in a season, one of the best finishers I think I've ever seen at Norwich City, if not as a striker in the Championship in general. Broke records after records, won Player of the Month after Player of the Month, Player of the Year. But he's not your typical footballer. He didn't score a worldie all season. He doesn't look like a footballer.
No, he doesn't.
It's going to be really interesting to see how he gets away in the Premier League because it's a lot more ruthless, as I said.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this is always the difficulty when a club comes up is that you're not going to be dominating games. You're not going to be able to keep. Obviously, in the season just gone, 15 shots a game, which is very, very high. I think he conceded 12 shots most games as well. So there were. At the other end of it, there were chances that were given to the opposition, and you and I both know when you move up a level, you get less opportunities for yourself, and they take those opportunities when you give it to the opposition. So, what have you learned from those previous seasons? We've both kind of been in that boat where you can understand what that level is in terms of the Championship, and then that jump up to the Premier League. What do you think might be different in this team to previous seasons?
Yeah, I think a lot of the lessons have come in the last couple of promotions that we've had. Alex Neil, we went up playing this wonderful football. It was magnificent, and it was a similar kind of situation. He came in when we were 12th, and he took us up through the playoffs playing this lovely football. And we started, actually, if you look back, that first Premier League season under Alex Neil fairly well. I think we beat Bournemouth 3-0. There was a couple of other wins, and we went to Newcastle on a Sunday. And we got pumped 6-2. And from that moment on, you could see it switch. We completely altered the way we played football. It was a lot more defensive. It was like, right, this is, instead of going to teams and keeping our philosophy here, we're just going to go damage limitation. So I think that's a real key point. Let's try and keep the way we play true. There are going to be times when we get absolutely pumped. I can see it coming on the first day of the season, to be honest. We just need to make sure that we stay true to ourselves and understand that there are going to be them games, understand that we are aiming for a 15th, 16th place finish. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. And I think the other one comes with recruitment. We saw with Chris Hughton signing the likes of Ricky Van Wolfswinkel, Leroy Fair. These are players who we all know about now and were high-profile failures.
Yeah.
I can't see that happening this time. We haven't really signed that many players. I don't think we've spent any money at all so far. So it's going to be really interesting. Let's keep that core of the squad that's got us up. Of course, we need additions. And let's stay true to ourselves.
Okay. Jack, always a pleasure, mate. As we said earlier in this episode, this video, go and check out the interview with Stuart Webber. And as Jack said as well, chats with Wes Houlihan, Russell Martin. Anyone else I'm missing, Jack?
Angus Gunn. He's a good one, actually. Go and watch that one.
Okay, so go check out Talk Norwich City. There is a link in the description. There'll be an end card probably knocking about me right now. Jack, as I said, thank you very much. Let us know your thoughts on Norwich City in the comments below. Hit that like button, subscribe to Ball Street, and we'll see you soon.